This is the Dreamers Podcast, where dreamers share their stories to inspire you. Now, join host Joe Pardo as he interviews a dreamer who's living their dreams.
Welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Pardo, and today I am interviewing Dave Sr., who is living his dream with a career in design and illustration. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thanks, Joe. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here in the studio with me tonight. Let's get started by giving the audience some background about yourself.
All right. I'm 35 years old, live in South Jersey, a wife and 3 wonderful kids. Wasn't always from South Jersey. I grew up a little bit on the West Coast and down south. Made my way over here. Teenager, spent my life on the East Coast, Long Beach Island area, and made my way towards Philadelphia when I went to college there, Tyler School of Art.
So what would you say inspires you, Dave?
There's a lot of different things. Family, life, the usual suspects there, but I think the biggest thing that inspires me would be other work that I come across, other designers that I respect, other illustrators that I respect. Just to see the work that they produce under similar circumstances or maybe something I've never touched before just gets really inspiring. You see a lot with these design annuals that we have in the industry that just highlights the best work throughout the year. They do different subsets of work, and it's just great to look through those and just see what other people are doing.
So how did your dream of becoming an artist in general come about?
It started early on. When I was in high school, I knew that that's the avenue I wanted to take. And even though I didn't quite know exactly what that was, how it would turn out, I started to make plans to get there by choosing the school I went to, just having conversations with my art teacher at that age, and family members, although they didn't really know what it was either. And I just sort of had this idea of what it was. And one of my earliest memories is when I would record tapes or CDs from friends, I would actually redraw the entire cover. And as I did that, I was sort of like, so this is like something people do. And I know that in itself wasn't design, but I knew like someone put thought into this. Someone put thought into where this image would be or the type would be. And it really opened my eyes to the possibility of that being something that I could one day do.
What were some of the covers that you drew?
Oh, a lot of old punk bands, many that I can't even remember the names to. One that really comes to mind is this band, 7 Seconds. Really short songs, really fun band, something I listened to when I was a teenager, not that I listen to anymore, but a lot of fun. Green Day's Dookie, that really crazy cover album, lots of illustration going on there. Labor of Love, but I was a teenager and I loved it and it was a lot of fun. Nirvana, just whatever was sort of big at the time and that I was getting my hands on.
How was your dream received by your family?
They were supportive. My grandparents, for sure, always commented on just the different path I was taking, and they were a big part of my life throughout those formative years and really helped push me along as far as my artistic endeavors and where I was going with that. My wife, who I actually met way back in high school, was also very supportive. She's always been supportive to this day of the work that I do. Through that time in high school, it was really great to just see that support and just have her push me along. You know, when you're in the creative field, there is that opportunity and possibility for doubts to creep in, but throughout those moments, she was there to just push me along and let me know that I had it in me and I could do it. And that was just a huge help and a huge support. Also, some teachers in high school early on really pushed me along, just offering a lot of advice and support. And all of that combined, I mean, really helped shaped who I became and how I pursued my dream and my vision.
So let's get into what steps you took to get started as an artist, and then let's go into what steps you took to make it a career.
The first step was going to art school. I went to Tyler School of Art primarily because my high school art teacher came from there and spoke really highly of it, but aside from that, I did a lot of research too before making my decision, looked at all the local schools, and really knew that was a place that I wanted to pursue, and was lucky enough to get accepted there and did a lot to work my way through college. It wasn't easy, but it was something that I was passionate about and was very rewarding and worthwhile. So that's early on where I got my start. Is I knew that that's where I needed to go, and I just knew throughout the whole time that to get where I wanted to be post-college, I needed to get the education at that time to be able to follow that dream. From there, I just right out of school was really aggressive in looking for work and looking to follow that career path, and was lucky enough to have some breaks along the way with the networking or just being at the right place at the right time.
So were there any roadblocks that you hit along the way?
Two, definitely to name a few. The two that come to mind are when I got laid off. They were at turning points of my life. The first job that I took out of school was a fun job. It really opened my eyes to the real world of how to work in the creative field, exclusively in the design world, I should say. But it didn't last that long. Within 6 months, there was a big layoff in the company. I was one of them, and I was getting married soon, so it was a scary moment. But things work out, and the next job I went to was Philadelphia Magazine, and I ended up being there for 5 years, and that led to a lot of different things. But some of my most rewarding experiences there were being on photo shoots, directing them, working with the photographers, just being on site or directing them remotely, and also working with illustrators. That was the highlight of every month, was finding which illustrators I can work with, commissioning the illustrations, art directing them, working back and forth. Just that whole collaboration process was so rewarding. It was just so much fun from my perspective, and it actually led me into wanting to pursue illustration on my own as well.
How did you overcome being laid off?
Well, that's a good question. I was definitely scared. Did it the wrong way the first time. I did mention I was laid off twice, but the first time I got laid off, I didn't tell anyone, and I don't recommend that. We were getting married, like I said, and my wife and I thought the best idea would be to keep it a secret, and that was nerve-wracking. But for me, it worked out because my next job came pretty quick and was a much better job, and it worked out. But still, I was like, that learning experience for sure. Never do that again. So another roadblock hit was after a number of years at the magazine industry took a hit, and there was a lot of layoffs there as well, and I got laid off there. And that was just after we had our first child. So again, it was a turning point in our life. My wife had just resigned, and now we were facing zero income. So it was, again, a scary moment, but one that I knew I can get through. And I immediately contacted my network. That's one of the biggest things I've been able to overcome the fear of, is using a network of people. I always felt I had to do it alone. I always felt like that was sort of an incorrect way to go about it, but it's exactly the opposite. Your network of friends and people that you know, business partners, is just, it's amazing. It's what helps everything work out. And that landed me another job after a few freelance moments. So that was just a huge benefit as well. And that time we did it right. We weren't keeping anything a secret. It was great because the family was supportive, and that was just reassuring that the extended family was understanding and supportive, and there wasn't any shame in that.
Yeah, it's got to be rough to be laid off, especially facing zero income. The mental aspect of that is probably 100 times more difficult to deal with than the monetary aspect.
Yeah, for sure it was. I agree. Just a lot of things to have to work through. Once all that support from the family was there, it was pretty easy to overcome and just to push forward and do it quickly. You know, sometimes those things work out. It did work out into a much better job, which then that job led into a much better job. And as you grow and as you get into your career, those things just start to unfold and unravel before you.
So has there been any parts of your dream that haven't quite worked out yet?
Yeah, I would love to just work for myself. That's just always been a dream of mine, to have my own clients, have my own schedule in a sense, and be able to work on the things that really inspire me. Be able to be selective on the work that I do. It's just a dream. It's something that helps motivate me as I'm doing the work I'm doing now. I know that it's a goal that I can one day reach, and it's an exciting time because in my day job that I have, I'm doing some good work, but outside of that, I'm doing work for those things that inspire me. I'm picking up clients, I'm working for family and for friends, and it's good to see that start to gain momentum and start to build up some kind of recognition.
Before the show, we were looking at some of your art on your website. You told me that you've done work for Rolling Stone Italy and as well as some others. Could you go over some of that?
Yeah, for sure. There's sort of two avenues in my life. One of them is just strictly graphic design work, and one is illustration work. And like I said, with the magazine, I started realizing that illustration was something I wanted to pursue, and got into that. At first, I was doing that solo, but within a few years, I don't remember exactly when, I think it's probably been 6 years now, I was contacted by a illustration rep, and it paid off for me. Just in the situation I was in, it was great to have someone be able to handle all the contract end of things and start finding work for me beyond the scope of what I was getting. And that landed me jobs like Rolling Stone Italy and Fortune magazine, a lot of really big magazines, Boston Globe as well, newspapers and stuff. And that's been great. It's been jobs that I love. They're highly conceptual. I get to read through the articles, read through the stories, work with the art directors on that end of it. Now I've flipped that role a little bit, and now I'm the illustrator working with the creative directors and the art directors. And that process to me is it's a ton of fun. Just coming up with the idea, then seeing it come to life, and then seeing it in print or on the web. So that's a different avenue of my life, but the two really cross over a lot. There's a lot of the same kind of conceptual thinking and the same approach that I give to both my design work and my illustration work.
Well, I mean, I love your work. I think it's great. You did work for Adventuratorium, which I really appreciate, both the T-shirts and the album, touching up the artwork that Matt Lewis put together for it, and I can't thank you enough for that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So if you were stranded on a deserted island with your family, what 3 things would you want to have with you?
I think a guitar would have to be one. Family loves music. I can play some guitar. My girls can play some guitar. They're a little young, but they're learning. A knife. Need to survive. I think that would be a good one. And a sketchbook to keep the memories.
That was a very good list.
Thank you. Part practical, part keepsakes.
So what do your dreams for the future look like?
I think what I touched on a little earlier, I'd love to be able to start to transition my career into more of a hybrid of my illustration and my design coming together under one roof, where I'm sort of my own boss, and picking some jobs that I'm really passionate about, and doing is the best work that I can do.
Yeah, it's really tough, especially in the art market. It's so competitive, and there's so many people. I mean, schools like the art institutes of wherever you're from are just cranking out students that they're bringing in. It's gotta muddy the water for you.
Yes and no. There's a handful of people, I believe, that really pursue that same kind of dream that I do, where you're working for yourself. But there's a lot of agencies, there's a lot of design studios out there that are soaking those young talents up, those kids that are fresh into the industry. And there's a lot of good work that's being pursued in those environments as well. And that's an environment that I'm in currently. And while I do enjoy it, it's not my end passion, but it's helping me get there. And there's some people who love to make a career out of that, and I think there's definitely enough of it to go around. It is competitive, though. That's not to say that it's not competitive. It's a highly competitive field, but it's also a very encouraging one. I believe a lot of the industry, the creative industry, really likes to share a lot of knowledge. Websites like Dribbble really reinforce that, where people are just showing the work that they do and getting feedback on it, and really just inspiring and encouraging others to do as good of work as they can, and really not to settle for doing subpar work. And that's, I think, what's great about the creative field, is there's just a lot of camaraderie there.
Well, do you have any last thoughts to share?
So yeah, my last thoughts would be some advice to not be afraid of following that dream, to not be fearful and let that dictate where you go. I learned early on about myself. I should say I learned later on that early on about myself, I was very fearful, and I was afraid of making mistakes or afraid of doing something wrong. And in the creative field, that's going to limit you. And so if you're someone that's pursuing that, or anything, I would say that this would hold true for is don't let that fear stop you from what you're doing, and know that it's totally fine to make mistakes. If you fall flat on your face, it's completely fine. You just get back up and you do it again. And really, there's no harm that's going to come of that. Once I sort of learned that through experience and learning it really the hard way, but feel like I've started to gain a lot more momentum a lot quicker because it's been helpful to just know that this process is enjoyable, and that's how I view it. It's just something I enjoy to do, and it makes it that much more fun.
So before we go, is there any websites or Facebook pages, Twitter handles you'd like to share?
Yeah, certainly. My work can be seen at davidesenior.com. I also have an illustration-specific website at davidseniorilustration.com. And then my Twitter, which I don't use a whole lot, but I'm there, is David Senior. So twitter.com/David Senior. And I'm on Facebook too, somewhere. It's under David Senior Illustration. If you just do a search for it on Facebook, it'll come up.
Well, we'll put those in the show notes.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, David. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been great. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully I can have you again in 6 months to a year, and we'll follow up on how everything's going on. Take care.
You too.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Dreamers Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Dreamers Podcast. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Dreamers Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Dreamers Podcast, please send an email to j@jpar.co. This podcast is copyright 2014 by jpar.co.